for judgment, but behold oppression for righteousness, but behold a cry. Woe unto them that join house to house and lay field to field, till there be no place that they may be placed alone in the midst of the earth. In my ears, said the Lord of hosts, of a truth many houses shall be desolate.
Good morning, welcome to the Line by Line Bible Study. Sorry we're a little later than normal. Having trouble connecting here. All right. We left off we talked about this parable very sufficiently. And I guess so distracted fixing things that I had something I wanted to say, but well, it's okay. It'll come back up. So now in verse 19, the chief priests and scribes the same hour seek to lay hands on him. And they feared the people, for they perceived that he had spoken this parable against them. The parable he had spoken about letting the vineyard to husbandmen who were supposed to give the increase back to the Lord, which of course is representing God. And they instead decide to slay the heir. And they understand. They may not understand every aspect of the parable because they're not going to accept Jesus, but they know what Jesus thinks of himself, or what they think Jesus thinks of himself. You know what I mean? They have a sense that this man thinks he's the Messiah. And the people think he's a prophet, at the least. And they think neither. And he issues them a statement at the end about, if you can stumble and fall on this stone and you'll be broken, but if it falls on you, you will be ground to powder. In reference to the judgment of God. Because, we have hope while we're alive and in this world and carrying on, we encounter things happen, business as usual. As long as it indeed is business as usual, we have room for error. But when the stone falls, and when the hammer falls, when God judges, then it's too late. Then it's like, if you are caught when the judgment of God falls, there's no further hope as far as, like if you're found faulty at that moment, or let's just put it this way, whatever, when the moment comes where he judges, and he's not there to bring mercy and lowly and riding upon an ass. It could be a reference to the fact that, like I said, they had a certain expectation of what it would be like when the Messiah would come. Everybody did. It's part of what makes them fear, because they think, if he thinks he's the Messiah, maybe he'll try to start a revolution. Maybe he'll try to start an uprising. We don't want that. Maybe he thinks he's going to be king. That could be dangerous. Because religious leaders, wherever you find them, among them are many unbelievers who believe in the power and the authority of the church, the synagogue, or the temple, but do not believe in the actual power of God. And they fall so in love with their authority and their position, they will do horrible things to maintain it. That's basically what Jesus encountered. Now, I think what I wanted to talk also about, just mention in passing thing I left off on, is the whole, the way Jesus is portrayed. Always gentle Jesus. The problem with the people perceiving you as gentle, okay? And there's nothing wrong with being actually gentle. It's one of the virtues, gentleness. But even the very idea, most of the times the words that translated gentle or meek actually have the implication of using restraint. But the problem is people, meaning someone who is perhaps very powerful, but restrained. Like a baby isn't genuinely gentle. Let's say, just for example, I mean, because babies can be quite rough. I mean, we would never give a hamster to a 2-year-old. Not without a lot of supervision, right? Because it might just well tear him apart. Or a 1-year-old for sure. Might tear him to pieces. Because, but my point is, weak things aren't gentle. They're just weak. They're soft. They have a soft touch. But the idea of gentleness in the Bible refers to the idea of someone with strength who could be rough, who uses instead gentleness. You know what I mean? Who is instead one who could be at all times bold and assertive. Assertive is not a good word. Aggressive. But instead chooses to be meek and not so aggressive. To be restrained and not brutal. Where it's always a possible, it's a distinct, it's something within their power to be brutal, to be rough. The problem with human nature is when they perceive you to be gentle and meek and all those things, they mistake it often for weakness. And that is what has happened to Christ, is that his kindness and gentleness is taken for weakness. And the caricature of Christ, not only in pop culture, but also among Christians, is of a weak figure. And sometimes they don't think of it as weak. They think, well, he's loving. But his love, that they portray him as having is a weak love. It's a love that comes from a weak person and not from a position of strength. Though most people still maintain some very strong ideas about what it represents, about the judgment of God, let's say. They maintain very strong ideas about what the convicting side of God's judgment would be, the side that condemns. That in the condemnation of God, they have visions of eternal torture, and with no mercy. And that I believe that there is a place for no mercy for you. It's in the Bible. There is mercy, because the presence of mercy implies that, maybe there is a mercy. He could be merciful towards all. He is merciful towards all. Jew, Gentile, male, female, near and far, small and great, rich and poor. God has mercy towards all. But that doesn't mean every individual actually obtains mercy. And people know this, mainstream, but it's still the popular vision of Christ is of someone who's nothing but soft love. Soft love. And although I've cautioned people, watch out for using tough love as an excuse for you to be merely abrasive, and to not use gentleness, and to not use kindness, and to not use restraint. And sometimes people say, I'm just using tough love, and they throw aside all restraint, which is not correct either. Use restraint. But I'm just making an observation that the perception of gentleness oftentimes is mistaken for weakness. It's a bad mistake to make. I'm not going to try to correct that in society. That's ridiculous. People are just going to be that way. That's how people are. That's their own fault. As Christians, we ought to know our God better than to make that mistake. But so often, it's like I did a song on Ezekiel chapter 13. Woe to the women who sew pillows to all my armpits. Over every joint of my arm and hand, over all the operations of my work. Everything I do has a pillow associated with it. That's what he was saying. Is that because there is a feminizing impulse, not just among women, but among men of we've got to be gentle. People are like that. You tell them, okay, we got to be righteous and judge things, and people get all freaked. They go, oh, we're going to be righteous and judge things. We're going to be harsh and mad and ah. And then you tell them, no, well, we got to be gentle. We're going to be gentle. We're not going to do it. It's like, dude, you got to walk the righteous line of, using good judgment in all situations. It's not like there's a time for every purpose under heaven. So I want to say a little bit more about that. And sometimes yes, we teach the scriptures, but it's also a question of like, what is it? What am I being inspired to talk about because of the situation? And I think of Jesus confronting religious leaders, I think about how people are then and what they perceive, and how people are now and what they perceive. And they'll draw this picture of Jesus as being a very milquetoast and sweet figure, or not sweet, but like soft, which he can be. He is gentle and merciful. Do not deny these things, meek and lowly and riding on an ass. But in his meekness, he threatens them. If I fall on you, I'm going to grind you to powder, dude. So you better get out of my way. You know? That's what he said to these people. And they perceived it. They understood that there was an implicit threat here. Oh, you think you're... Oh, okay, thank you. We understand where we stand, you know? They've been plotting to kill him for a long time, and they're trying to entrap him. And you know what? He's not having any of it. He's like, I'm coming to cleanse my Father's house. This is a den of thieves here. And all these elders and priests and people are participating willingly in it. And they're mostly angry because he's upsetting it. It was funny because I'm going to make a little commentary about, a lot of people know that when I first started studying the Bible, I studied with Arnold Murray. He's dead. All right. But he's still on TV, I think. He certainly is still on his satellite network. His son is broadcasting, and as soon as his son replaces all of his broadcasts, it's probably going to become less and less popular. It's probably already dropped off quite a bit, because without the personality of him, you're not going to have much of a ministry. Because it's not just about what he does; it's about the cult of personality, and it can become that, because someone does a really good job, it becomes about that person, and then every man's ministry, you can't just it's hard to hand your thing off to somebody else, you know what I mean? And the likelihood that the person you're going to be able to hand it off to is your son is going to be very small. A lot of people want to do that; they force that to happen, and then that doesn't work out. Sometimes it does, right? Sometimes it does. Sometimes the son is a nice... Maybe he isn't his father, but he's some sort of interesting substitute. Okay, Arnold Murray, he used to say, if you want to upset a Kenite, and by Kenite he meant Jew, all right, just to be quite frank, upset his money table. And that's what he used to say, upset his money table. But tell me what race of men on the face of the earth doesn't get upset if you upset their money table. Come on. And the funny thing is, here's the irony for you, anyone who listens to Arnold Murray. When people started posting his studies on YouTube, he got so upset, he made a video, and it's posted on there. He gets livid about it. You know why? Because he doesn't want people sharing the videos. When I was into his studies when I was young about cassettes, he said you could make copies of the cassettes and share them, because the purpose of this ministry was to get the word out there, right? And I think that was fine, because like if I make a cassette copy, who am I making it for 5, 6 people, maybe 10 people? That's not hurting him. And plus, as a central hub, I'm probably buying everything. You know what I mean? Which I literally did. And then, I bought every cassette he had at the time. Over a period of like a year. It's been like 2 years, actually. I think by the time before I obtained everything. Well, I didn't obtain all. I obtained all the cassettes I couldn't record off the TV. I was recording off the TV. Well, but then YouTube, then someone puts up a video on YouTube and he sees 10,000 views. He thinks that's 10,000 sold videos. Not necessarily. 10,000 sold CDs, not necessarily. And he got upset. Apparently, even Irishmen get upset when you upset their money table. Who doesn't? Somebody start messing with, the bank like messes up on my bank statement. I get upset. It's hard not to. It's such an unfair characterization to just label. Oh, look, because then what happens is a confirmation bias. Every time you see a Jew upset about money, you think, aha! It's a load of garbage. It is. Everybody cares about their stuff. What belongs to them. It's human nature. Other races feel the same about my race. And that may I just generically white. I mean, they just think we're money grubbing and blah, 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 blah. It's nonsense. Everybody's money grubbing, no doubt. It's one of the, the love of money is the root of all evil, all meaning in a generic sense, all kinds of evil. Not every sort of evil is the love of money. It's one of those things people, again, or maybe you just take it as a hyperbole. Okay. So anyways, yeah, they upset their money tables, but it's not just their money, it's their authorities coming after. They're afraid of losing their place. Anyone put into power gets like this. It's not particular, it's not like some racial problem. It's just human nature. And they watched him and sent forth spies, which should feign themselves just men, that they might take hold of his words, so that they might deliver him unto the power and authority of the governor. They're like, how can we get the government involved? How can we get the state involved? How can we get the Romans involved in this? It's odd because they were sort of afraid of the governor as far as what might happen if he did it. But they thought, if we can head this off before he starts some sort of rebellion, before he does something, whatever, we'll give him the governor. Or you could, if you don't think that that's often a plausible. They certainly, let me put it this way. My seeing their motivation as a fear of the Romans is because in the Gospels, that is stated as one of their motivations, that the Romans would come and take away their place and their temple. They feared the Romans. And it's part of their motivation. It's certainly not all of their motivation. I always think it's funny when people, they'll try to talk about why was Jesus crucified. Some say it was because of this event, because he overthrew the tables of the money changers and them that bought and sold in the temple. Right? They think that was the reason, because he, maybe was disruptive enough that even the Romans would take notice. And but the thing is, I don't know, that is not. Well, they don't list that as the accusation, and I suppose you could say, well, that's Christian bias. They didn't want to list that as the accusation. But it's something we're proud of. It's something the Pharisees would not necessarily want to publicize either. Yeah, they wouldn't want to be like, well, it was because he overthrew the money tables. And everyone would be like, we always thought that was a bit sketchy. You know that? You crucified him for that? And, okay, so on some level plausible, but the idea that the Roman governor would be that upset by that is perhaps a bit much. I don't know. But here's the thing, is like trying to definitively state like one reason. There are always multiple motivations going on. For some people, it's going to be more concerned about him striking at their authority, meaning like undermining their authority among the people even, which obviously they don't have a lot of faith in already. They don't have a lot of faith in their authority over the people. They're in the position of authority. But people in positional authority who have not earned it, meaning, like, I feel like people who listen to me regularly, on some level, I must have earned their willingness to listen to me, because there is no organization saying you got to listen to this person. There's no I haven't done anything. And look at this is obviously my house. You know what I mean? This is not a fancy place. You know what I mean? You can see homemade furniture behind you. You know what I mean? It's all homemade. Even the chair I'm sitting on is homemade to some degree. I mean, it's a, what would you call it? I want the word. Scavenged? Not exactly scavenged. Repurposed. That was the word I wanted. Because I'm sitting on the chair from an old van, car. You know, the seats from cars can make awesome chairs. Very good. My back has never been better since I got this chair. Pulled the chair out, put a couple wheels on it. It's the best chair I've ever owned, and it didn't cost me anything. You know? But, I mean, you can get chairs like that from, and this one's just, I had to unscrew it from the car. You can get them at the junkyard for like $20, $30, you know, for a chair from a vehicle. The thing is getting one that's clean. Fortunately, this is from my own vehicle, so, you know, a derelict vehicle I had. Anyways, you see, like, I don't put on a suit. I don't put on any titles or airs. And I've intentionally made this study smaller than it has to be. I don't know if I meant, but like, you see my name when you see this. You know, like it says here, you know, you see on these cards my name, but nowhere in the description. You know, my name is kind of small up there, but you can see it under line by line Bible studies, right? It's there. I say it in the study. You know, you get my name, right? But I could get a lot more people here because I have a lot more viewers from other sources. Like, you know, the funny stuff I do from even my other YouTube channel that I list all the time has many more subscribers because I did it in my own name. And I don't have a my name is not entirely unknown through my music and through my other work, just for my work and through comedy, all right, funny stuff I've done. I have people who would subscribe probably just on that basis. So my name isn't on here. So it's kind of hard to find. And it's not something I'm like saying I would never put my name on it, but I was like, I don't want to flood myself with a lot of people here for my name. You know what I mean? If you already listen to my Bible studies, you found it because you know, you go to my website, you read something, you hunted it down. I mean, you hunted it down through my website and stuff, not through just it being thrown up. Oh, you like Paul Strangini? Well, whatever. But when people are in authority, and when they use authority, they carry with them a self-consciousness. This is going to be probably a running theme for even today, one more time. There's a certain self-consciousness. I know I didn't earn it, right? I mean, what I mean by earn it, I mean in the sense of like my listeners are earned because they listen because because of the content, right? But a lot of ministers, they're in their position, and they have their listeners because they were placed there, and that creates a certain self-consciousness of I did not get here by convincing all these people. I inherited all these people. These people were given to me through the denomination, to the guy who worked before me and the guy who worked before him, or whatever. You know, on some level, I've received this ministry, not from God, from men, and therefore men can take it away. My ministry is from God. No one can take it from me. Like literally, no one can take my ministry away from me. I mean, it's like, oh, you could say like, oh, you know, what if you got arrested and thrown in prison? I still have my ministry and all my authority. You know what I mean? Because it does not come from I don't have an artificial position that's made by men, which causes them to fear, you know, because it can be undermined. So that's why pastors don't sometimes like questions. Some pastors probably do, I guess, right? Some guys are all right. I always throw that out there just so you understand. I'm not utterly against people who are in those positions. But I'm saying by creating those positions, there's always the potential of and giving unearned power and authority to people. You know, you could say they earned it through going to school. Okay, on some level. But my point is earned through the trust and through genuine connection and through people understanding a man's sincerity and like making a conscious decision to give their attention to what that person's saying. They're doing it because they feel obligated, and he has been put in authority, and he must know what he's talking about. You know what I mean? Some of them, over time, do earn that. But just on the face of it, often it isn't earned. And then time goes on, and they don't earn it. That's why a lot of churches are dying. Because you've got men at the front who cannot command the trust and attention of the people in the church. And they have a whole system where it demands a man to stand up in front of the church and command everyone's trust and attention. I mean, like, that's what they need. That's how churches run. It's a lecture wherein the trust and attention is given to the one man, and we sing, and and a lot of the other trappings are what keep it from falling apart entirely. Because we can still sing, we can still shake hands, we can still do whatever rituals we still hold on to. And maybe this week the preaching will be interesting, or maybe it'll at least be short. We can always make it short. It's like, 20 minutes, excellent. Let's get over to Denny's, because I'm hungry. Boy, I am hungry now. I think I went to bed hungry. So, the word authority is in this verse. Authority is something that very interests me, because I began thinking maybe I need to go become a religious figure become like a priest or something. I only thought of actually being a priest, because my only real experience was with. It was weird because I wasn't Catholic, but I somehow I was when I was born I was baptized in a Catholic church. I went to First Communion around 8 or 9. I think it was 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there. My dad talked to me about church and said we don't need, And for some reason it was kind of put up to me. Do you think we should? What do you think? I don't know if I made the decision, but I was asked my opinion at 10 years old. I'm like, we don't have to go to church. We can do our religion at home. And that's what we did. But I still kind of, on some level, thought of the Catholic Church as being the official church. Because we didn't start going to a Protestant church. My dad had described us as charismatic Catholics. So that's where I thought authority was. Authority is dangerous. And so what I'm saying is, it's something I remember Arnold Murray talking about it and saying where's the authority that comes from my ability to teach, or he talked about teaching as one with authority, right? Teaching as one who has authority to teach, meaning, and he took it as not this or that, but. And maybe that's one way, if I say, if I present to you a doctrine, I say, here are two views on this doctrine, and I'm not certain which one, but I favor this one. He would say that wasn't authoritative enough. Maybe he's right. But I don't know if that's the kind of authority. With certainty, is that what authority means? Certainty? There's different things. To me, it means as one who has... When Jesus taught as one as having authority, it's like the Pharisees and the scribes, they had authority. So they would get up there and teach because they were in authority. Jesus had no authority, but he got up there and taught as if he did. Meaning like he had a right to say what was right and wrong, instead of being like some farmer or some carpenter. That's why, so I don't, if teaching with authority is a virtue that, I might be mocked for not doing, I don't think so. I think I teach like I ought to be here. You know what I mean? I teach like I ought to be here. Like I've got a right to say what I'm going to say. Do I teach with less authority than a normal pastor? I don't think so. It's because I'm careful with my words. There's governmental authority too. The power of the state is the most fearful of all, because they have the power of life and death. The state can kill you. That's how much power we give the state. They can kill you. Back then, it took a lot less, too. It was easy to kill people, especially if they weren't citizens. Oops. That's the worst that, you kill someone who's a non-citizen. Oops. But it's not that big a deal. Whereas if it was a citizen, there might be investigations and, like as they had certain rights. That comes up in the book of Acts. Paul appeals to his rights. So they feign themselves. They pretend to be just men. I have kept the commandments from my youth up. Kind of like that rich young ruler, right? Except I assume he was genuine. I mean, he probably kept those commandments from in the sense that the Pharisees would say you ought to, right? These men are feigning to be just. The feigning to be something you are not is something very prevalent on the internet. People, because they're anonymous, they think they can do whatever. Even though the handles they take on themselves, I can't identify you personally, but on the internet, you're still you. In the beginning, I used to say, I'm still anonymous. I'm still pretty much anonymous. Even though, like, I got, you can look me up on Google, and Google says I'm an entity and a musician, genre, rock. That doesn't tell you a lot about me. Someone said, you're all over the place. It's like, yeah, I know. I'm not trying to hide. I never have. Some people think that's foolish, and I'm like, well, on some level. I mean, what do public personalities do? Everyone knows who they are. And they're not hard to track down. It's like, I live in what might be loosely characterized as a fortress. I replaced my dogs with German Shepherds. It's not like I haven't thought about, it's like I would think someone, I've had a lot of enemies for a lot of years. People threaten me. And most of them are too lazy to show up. And it would be scary to come out here, quite frankly. A lot of people, that get them out in the middle of nowhere, they're not so brave. If you want to take a man in his house, you got to first, if you want to spoil the goods of a strong man, you got to first bind the strong man. You can't just show up. And they asked him and saying, Master, we know that thou sayest and teachest rightly. Neither acceptest thou the person of any, but teachest the way of God truly. There's a lot of flattery, right? You say and teach right. You say the right things. We know this. You say and teach the right things. So this is all not sincere. True, but totally not sincere. Neither acceptest thou the person of any. Now, that's probably true and sincere. It's flattering because, the Old Testament talk about respect of persons, and it's wicked. Meaning, one man, respect of persons, is that ever addressed in the Old Testament? I think it is. But it is more a New Testament thing, but I don't think, I can tell you this. I'm not an expert in the law of Moses, all right? I probably should become one because I'd probably be really good with it. I need to, if I didn't realize that my views are, well, and here's the thing. I don't do this for views. Eventually we will study the law of Moses. On some level, maybe Deuteronomy, I don't know. Because it's like, we should probably be familiar with all the scriptures, right? And I've certainly read through it more than once, and certain parts of it I'm very familiar with. But I'm sure there are parts that I'm not, that I would be like, I don't know. There's very little in the Bible that surprises me. People can say stuff, oh, that's in the Bible, and I can say, no, that's not, if it isn't. Because I'm familiar enough with everything in the Bible that I can just say if someone says something that's definitely not in there, I'm probably going to know it. Not flawlessly, of course. It's like I'm not making any claims like that. But the Old Testament law says this. It's concerning the respect of persons, that you are not to have one law for the rich and one law for the poor. One set of rules for noblemen and one set of rules for the common people. One set of rules for the stranger. But there was supposed to be one kind of justice, is God's justice. And so the principle goes back to the Old Testament. And that's why they flatter him with this, because they also value this. Everyone knows. What does respect of persons mean? Well, it is essentially respect of authority. Or maybe not so much authority, but the because in one sense, authority deserves some sort of respect. But when you talk about with respect of person, or acceptest, I don't know if acceptest is the right word there. Let's look that up briefly. I want to talk about accept, because usually they talk about respect of persons, right? Here it says you don't accept. What does that mean? Spies. It literally means someone hired to lie in wait. The spies, by the way, feign themselves to answer on stage, pretend. All right, come on, Paul. Word studies are fun. And you can use this and you just go through and look at all the little quick definitions of the word, and it gives you an interesting take. Though you can't always trust that. Except, it means to take or receive. Okay. To receive. Of course, that is what accept means, but like it gives you a little different flavor of how that should be spun. And the idea of accepting someone's person, receiving them, meaning that because they were, let's say, like dressed in fine clothing, or because they were an important person. I mean, what makes a person important? Right? What makes me unimportant and like the county judge important? What's his position? Right? His position. Right? He's got a position. And some people, when someone has a position, because of this concept of respect of persons or receiving persons, or what this means is you treat them differently than you would a normal person. Like maybe someone would be contemptuous towards me because who are you? Who are you? This guy is somebody. He's a politician. It's very readily seen among politicians and clergy. That's why I do not put on the trappings of person. I don't try to pretend to be something. So I don't put on a suit or airs. Or I try to teach with confidence, but also with humility. We ought to. I'm going to try to be careful to do all that. So personhood is like that. They have some sort of, there's a sense that they are somehow more important than other people, or whether it be through riches, position in government, status as a religious leader. I've had people exhibit respect of persons towards me because of my status as kind of a religious teacher. It does happen where I perceive that I'm treated differently. Or, like I said, where I've had people who I've known for years, but then they discover what I do now, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I apologize for using profanity in front of you, which is strange. If you use it normally, then use it in front of me. Do not allow my person to deter you from your normal behaviors. I'm not here as a judge and a divider among you. You know what I mean? It's like I'm not here as what? Like you think I think you don't sin? You know what I mean? That or that my opinion of you being high somehow helps you with God? You know what I mean? Like what does my opinion mean to you? I just want you to know what I'm about. It's like I know, but you shouldn't. Don't bother. I'm not that important for my opinion on you is so unimportant so as to not be worth mentioning. But that's the thing is like people want to, the respective person causes people to want to impress important people, right? They find someone important. Oh, Father, well, come sit down. This is the priest is coming over today. Clean up the house. It's my brother-in-law is coming over today. Who cares? Now, some people, they don't, if you want to clean up your house for guests, well, then whatever guest it is, you probably the same concern. If you don't have respect to persons, it's like, it doesn't matter if it's like someone you don't find who is not important or someone who is important. You pretty much are the same. So when I think of people like that, I think of my wife as someone who does not accept anyone's person. Sorry. I mean, sorry to her, because I try not to praise her too highly. But it's hard not to. All right. Teachest thou the way of God truly. Well, we all can fall into accepting the persons of people, though. I'll tell you, it's like, you get stars, like celebrities. I forgot about that category, right? They're famous. Everyone knows who they are. And why that's important, I don't know. The more people know you, the more important you are. Really? And you can feel it, though. I mean, like I remember when Google sent me the message, and I was considered an entity. I thought it was funny, but also it made me feel sort of like, oh, geez, a major thing that people use has recognized me. My name is something that's notable. Get a special little box with I could put my face there. I got my album there, but I'm probably going to put something else because it seems weird that my name is associated with my album, but that's all right. So the question they ask is the famous one: is it lawful for us to give tribute to Caesar or no? Yes or no question. All right, I told you about that the other day. Yes or no question. Will you stop beating your wife? Yes or no? Will you stop it? Are you going to stop beating your wife? Are you going to stop being a scumbag? Yes or no? Yeah. I mean, a question to which no answer. They put you in a position. The idea is to put you in a position where either answer, it's called a double bind, right? Where either answer is no good. And people on TV do this, interviews, news reporters. And honestly, if someone is a news reporter, one thing if someone's a antagonist for one side or the other in a political debate, I personally, to me, the essence of meekness, one person, I think it was Jordan Peterson, described meekness in the biblical sense as knowing how to use the sword, but refraining from doing so. Okay. And that's fine. I don't know where he gets that, though. It's like, I'm like, but that's similar. I remember Arnold Murray, he described meekness as the way the brokenness of a war horse. Like, no, he didn't brokenness. He's like, but a war horse, the way it is restrained by the bridle. Bridled is a good example. There's a lot of power and strength, and, he would emphasize the war-making part of it, though. Okay. And I agree with all that. And I'm assuming Peterson's thing came from someone who pointed out to some usage in Greek elsewhere. Because sometimes people have refrained to they will resort to other Greek sources to understand what they meant by certain words. And you don't really need to do that. It's like gentleness is not what a baby does. Like an infant, newborn infant, its gentle touch is not truly gentleness because it can't do anything else. Gentleness as a conscious effort is the soft touch of a strong man. That's gentle. And meekness is the restrained response of a powerful and skillful warrior, who could hurt someone, but instead chooses the path of meekness. Like someone insults me, and instead of punching them in the face, I meekly say, what exactly do you mean by that? Or I exercise restraint and just take it. Because, what is it to me? I'm so strong. I can take a insult. I can try to allow myself not to get worked up to use violence. Like some man's words could. I'm not saying I'm beyond the provocation. I have words in my past history. I tried to strangle a man for speaking the wrong words to me. A man insulted me, and I took him by the throat. This is when I was young, quite young, But it's like, I was a Bible student, though, I'll tell you that. This is when I was 19, I think. 19, maybe 20. He insulted me in my own home. I took him by the throat with 2 hands, threw him on the couch, and then proceeded to strangle him. And if there hadn't been 2 other guys there to take me off of him, I might have killed him before I came to my senses. I mean, I think I would have eventually come to my senses, but I might have killed him. I've got murder in me. I've got it in me. And all I did was insult me. I mean, it was a pretty salty insult. You know, he suggested that I should perform oral sex on him, but you know, in a more like, he meant it metaphorically. Yeah, I mean, he meant it metaphorically. Like he was saying, like, you're wrong, blank, blank, blank. Or blank my blank. You know, right? It was F you, blank my blank, and then I strangled him. Or tried to. You know? I tried to. And it was probably a bit, and it was silly. It was a stupid reason, right? A stupid reason. Not just because of what we were arguing about was even stupid. We were arguing about sports. Yeah. It's really stupid. Really stupid. And I was running him down. And the thing is, I was running him down and laughing at him about his opinion on something. And he took it rather personally and got angry and said those things to me, to which the escalation, you know what I mean? That's not very meek. For one, I should have been I shouldn't be mocking someone and running them down. I mean, I provoked the words that came from him. I provoked them. And I could say, well, he provoked me by saying bad things about my sports team. Yeah, I suppose, right? But again, that's a small provocation. Oh yeah, now I'd be like, oh yeah, who cares? I don't even watch sports anymore. You know, I don't even watch them. I don't even pay attention. But why did I say all that? Why am I going back on that? Well, I know why. Because putting someone in a double bind, because that's what this is. People who talk about paying taxes to Caesar, I'm going to talk about the double bind. When you talk to people, when you argue, when you're trying to talk to promote the gospel, and let's say you get resistance, and you want to contend earnestly for the faith. You know, that's interesting. There's a lot of scriptures. A man of God should not contend. Now, contend, he might mean literally fight. But it also calls us to earnestly contend for the faith. But it also says we shouldn't argue or debate. But it depends on what this is all has to be taken with wisdom. Because there is definitely, Christians debate all the time. And no one questions it like, well, it says you shouldn't debate. Because we know it's not literally what it means. If you take those words literally, we'll never be able to argue our points ever with anyone. Because it says we shouldn't. Often what the sense is that we shouldn't debate among ourselves. We shouldn't argue among ourselves. That shouldn't be. Not that we can't have a discussion and have a disagreement which we try to come to an understanding. Now, that's the thing. Putting someone in a double bind is a debate technique. It's a rhetorical technique. It's dirty. That kind of debating should be never among you. You know what I mean? Other things. There are certain things like in debating, in debate you try to use logic and you try to use reason, right? But there are certain things people do and when having these discussions that are not logical, not reasonable. There are different things like there's the straw man, where people will create a false picture of what you believe. They'll mischaracterize what you believe and say it's ridiculous and attack it like that or say it's terrible, it's a bad idea. But that's not what you believe. Now, sometimes, here's the thing. In politics and stuff, sometimes in war, it's winner take all, and winning is all that really matters for some people in some situations. You know, the current president, one of the ways he got to be president was by just having the attitude of, I'm going to win. No matter what, I'm going to win. I'm going to get on that debate stage, I'm going to win. It didn't matter if it was fair, it didn't matter if it was right, it was win. And honestly, if you're going to conduct a war, That's not such a bad strategy. Win. It's about winning, not about fair play when it comes to that. When it comes to that, I'm going to kill you or you're going to kill me. Once you've come down to that place, you should try to win. You know, if it comes to a fight where someone's trying to kill me and I've decided to defend myself, I'm going to try to win. I'm not going to say, well, you know, kick him in the groin would not be fair. It's not against the rules of, you know, the Marquess of Queensberry. You know, the Marquess of Queensberry rules. So, you know, I don't want to do that. Or I don't want to gouge him in the eyes. That would be painful. I'm just going to we're going to have a fisticuffs here. We're going to have a fair fight. Right? But the thing is, as a Christian, I should be, I shouldn't be fighting. I shouldn't be making war. But when I do fight, the weapons of my warfare are not carnal, but they are mighty from God. You know, bringing down of strongholds. So, I mean, Jesus is fighting for the truth here, right? And when I do this, I want to do it. I want to fight. You know, a man that contends for mastery has to do so according to the rules. You know what I mean, I can't, in the midst of my doing right, do wrong. I cannot justify doing wrong because I feel that the results I might obtain are right. You know, all those things I said about fighting, they're true. Like, you know, it's like, you know, I don't know. It's funny because it's like, I don't know morally exactly where I draw the line. Because I cling to somewhat like, you know, like if I get out of my car and a couple of people jump me and try to hurt me, or let's say they tried to hurt my family, I would very well use mortal force against them. I'm pretty sure I would not hesitate, actually. Like I said, I know I've seen myself in certain situations how violent I can get. And I know, it's like, you know, like I've said before, I think my name is stringa in Italian means squeeze. And the region my family comes from was like a bandit region. I think my ancestors were probably thugs. Yeah, I mean, they were all and all of them are very athletic and stuff. It's like, I know that there is definitely violence in me. You know? I remember my dad used to talk about all the fights he used to get into when he was young. You know? Before he was a Christian. He'd get into fights and stuff. He talked about the toughest fight he ever had. He'd never lost a fight. He'd been in enough fights to say he'd never lost one. You know? I don't say that about myself either. But I avoided a lot more fights. I avoided a lot of fights. I never lost a fight. Avoided a lot of fights. A lot of people didn't want to fight me. And there's good reason for that. It's easier to negotiate from a position of strength. You know, it's like if I could talk, if I start talking, let's not fight. Even if a guy's drunk, he starts to calm down. Yeah, even if a guy's drunk, he's gonna, maybe I just like another beer. You know, so I never got in brawls and stuff like that. But what I'm saying is morally the line. I want to win, right? I want to win in perilous situations. In contending for the truth, I want to win. But I do not want to corrupt the truth by, like, let's say, using a straw man argument against another person. Meaning by essentially lying about what they believe. Now, I may accidentally present a straw man argument because I don't understand. Like, let's say I start talking about the Catholic Church. Someone made a comment on one of my videos. You're not right about the Catholic Church. It was because I said, I was talking about the minimum requirements for salvation. And I wrote a very lengthy response on that comment on that video that, well, I'm doing this based on what I heard a Catholic actually say on EWTN, the Catholic Network. I don't know if his characterization is correct. And I certainly don't know that the Catholic Church teaches do the least you can to be saved. But he was saying that represents a minimum requirements for salvation, the catechism, where that was one of the things that it presents to you is what's the least you can do to be saved. And he didn't say it in those words, but that was his essential, what he was trying to tell us. And it's not that I thought that, that's what they do. That's the worst thing. And if it sounded like I was saying that, that's not what I meant. But maybe I took it that, maybe I did mean that at the time. But now I understand. It's like, okay, of course, that's not necessarily what they go around preaching. But mentioning to me made me think that, like, even though that may not be the explicit teaching of the church, that's what a lot of people believe. That's what a lot of people believe. And so I didn't intentionally make a bad argument. It was just, it happened. And so we can make mistakes. We got to own our mistakes. But we don't want to try to create false double binds. It's dirty. Now, when they do it to him, he does it back to them, but not in a way. He's not doing it to destroy them. He's doing it to defend himself. You know, and I've frequently, what I'll do is often I'll point out the straw man argument, and I'll say, would you like it if I did this to you? If I said, oh, you believe this, and you believe, I'm like, we're not communicating, on that level, we're not having a communication. You're just trying to somehow score points against me. And it doesn't really work, because I've been in a lot of arguments, and I find that when people do this, by pointing out what they're doing, people see it, and then they realize I'm winning. Because they're not even really talking about me anymore. You know, if someone starts saying something like, oh, well, you believe Jesus was 10 feet tall and he had a mustache and a purple beard. And I was like, well, no, I don't. That's not, you know, I'm like, oftentimes that's also interspersed with things you do. And what they'll do is they'll combine a bunch of things into this knotty mess that, like, you have to untangle it. Like, they'll say 50 things, and half of them are right, half of them are wrong. In order to make a response, you'd have to write something like 10 pages. It's basically, they give you a wall of text that is designed for you not to be able to respond. Well, what's the point of that? It's just to shut down the conversation, I guess. I don't know if they intend that. They think that's winning. Shutting down the conversation is not winning necessarily. You may feel victorious, but all you've done is ended the conversation with foolishness. I'm saying is don't be like them. Don't lie in wait with crafty arguments meant to cause people to slip up. But he perceived their craftiness and said unto them, why tempt ye me? You're tempting me. You're testing me here, aren't you? Show me a penny. Whose image and superscription hath it? They answered and said, Caesar's. And he said unto them, render therefore unto Caesar the things which be Caesar's, and unto God the things which be God's. And they could not take hold of his words before the people, and they marveled at his answer, and they held their peace. So by answering this, because that was a good one, because a lot of double binds, there are no good answers like that. Like where he actually gave a positive answer instead of saying, you're trying to put me in a double bind. It's a yes or no question. Should we or should we not? And here's the thing. It's a good one. It's a nasty one. Because unlike not when, but like, will you stop beating your wife? Or when did you? A lot of times they present that as, when did you? But I like, will you? Will you stop beating your wife? Yes or no? It's a yes or no question. I only want you to answer yes or no. Please, can you tell me yes or no? Will you stop beating your wife? And I hope you understand how that's obviously the person, the answer is, no, I don't beat my wife. But I want, no. Yes or no? I don't beat my wife. Yes or no? Will you stop? You know, and they present the question. Now that's an exaggeration, but you can look for it more subtly. You'll see almost every time you see a news person berating someone for not answering yes or no to a question. It's a simple yes or no question. It's almost never a simple question. It's dirty. Jesus, though, gets his way by, once again, answering the question with a question. But it's reasonable because he's asking for further details on this question. It's a very clever way to go into this, because they asked him a yes or no question. Is it lawful? Oh, great. My Skype is making noise. Okay. So, is it lawful? Is it lawful to pay taxes, blah, blah, blah? Okay. And then he responds with the whose picture is on the coin. And this is something I'm not going to spend a lot of time on because we've all heard this before. It's a very clever way to respond because he's saying, well, this is Caesar's picture on this coin. It belongs to Caesar. And it's like, well, then render to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, to God what is God's. So on some level, what he's saying is he's throwing it back in their lap in this way. Well, this money, because on some level they would say, if they say we should pay taxes, the Jews saw that as, all right, I'm going to take at least 5 minutes here to do this. The Jews would see it as paying taxes is sort of like saying that the Roman rule over them was just. When they're being ruled by outsiders, heathen. You know what I mean? They're being governed and they're under the dominion of a pagan power of people who worship idols. And there was some, and they're saying, and there's some controversy like this. I pay taxes, right? And some of those taxes over time have gone to pay for abortion, right? Or I remember in the 90s when there was big controversies over what the National Endowment for the Arts was paying for people to do. The National Endowment for Arts would give grants to artists to do stuff, including things like Piss Christ, which is a crucifix of Jesus submerged in a jar full of the artist's urine. And they received money to do this art. All right? I'm an artist too. I'd like to get money to do art. Whoa. Right? And a lot of Christians were upset about this. This is an art on one hand. This is also, it's also intentionally offensive. It's just trying to be offensive. And that's, and it's fine. I'm not complaining about that because I make art that is intentionally offensive too. Except now, it's like people aren't sure if that's okay anymore. And we had to put up with piss Jesus, but God forbid God forbid someone said piss CNN, submerge the CNN logo in a jar of piss or something like that. That would be unforgivable. Or a politician, whatever. Usually, a lot of times people's outrage is a one-way street. It's only outrage on their own behalf. So there's a sense that paying taxes would contribute to the Roman government, and not just to their rule over us, which we see as unjust, but to their paganism and to the building of their temples. How can we take part in the building of pagan temples by paying these Roman taxes? You know what I mean? And so on some level, you're contributing to things you don't agree with. Like paying taxes. Let's say you're an absolute anti-war pacifist. But you still have to pay taxes, and some of those taxes go to pay for the military, which is we all have dimes and pennies that have gone to pay for bullets that kill people. You know what I mean? That kill people. Or even the police, your local police you support through your property taxes, perhaps, or local sales tax, or whatever taxes locally are collected. Those local police, you pay for their guns, and if they misbehave, the salary you're paying for other people's bad behavior. And so on some level, they would see this, hey, this is objectionable. I don't want to pay taxes to Caesar because Caesar's going to build temples to Zeus and to Apollo and to Artemis and to or Athena. I thought it was Athena or Artemis. Which one is the Roman one? Oh, whatever. Actually, Artemis and Athena, I don't think those are the same thing. Artemis was Diana. That's right. Diana is the Roman version. Artemis is the Greek. Yeah. And Zeus and Jupiter. I don't know, whatever. Who cares, right? I used to know those things a little better. Anyways, so you build temples to Jupiter. And we don't want that. So that's why they don't want to pay taxes to Caesar on some level. But they're required by law. If they don't, and someone teaching that you shouldn't pay taxes, that's something that the Romans might find, the governor might take a keen interest in. Some guy bringing all these crowds and saying, don't pay your taxes. Forge swords. We're going to fight the Romans. That kind of talk could be seen as quite subversive, very subversive talk. And the Roman governor might take interest. So that's why they're using this attack. we'll talk about taxes. Get him to commit to a position. Because on one hand, if he says we shouldn't pay taxes, the governor's going to be interested. If he says you should pay taxes, the people he's going to lose the confidence of the people. Because they say, what kind of Messiah says pay taxes? And Jesus' perspective is that, look at, and the coins you're paying in it, whose picture's on this coin? Where'd this coin come from? It's Caesar. So give to Caesar what is Caesar's. And how did you get that coin? By doing Roman. The thing is, a lot of the movie The Life of Brian, which is a Monty Python movie, which is very irreverent, and some people at the time took great offense to it, but I find it very interesting. It's an interesting satirical commentary, not so much on Jesus at all, really, but on Christianity and on Westerns and on Judaism also. And then it's not so much about God even. It's about humans and our beliefs, and it's fine. I'm not recommending it or anything. It's just I've seen it. And they're like, there's a point where all the revolutionaries are sitting around. They're like, death to the Romans. And then they start talking about what have the Romans ever done for us? And it's like, well, the roads. Oh, they're like, oh yeah, the roads. That's right. And the aqueducts, and the indoor plumbing, and there were all these things that the Roman. I don't know if they all had indoor plumbing in Judea or anything like that, but they started talking about the benefits of living in Roman civilization. And the thing would be, they'd received a lot from the Romans. A lot of their peace and their security was also, they also defended them. On some level, what your money goes into the government, your specific dime doesn't go to kill anybody, but you contribute to the major thing, and you get a lot of benefits out of it. And the very coinage of it, the koinonia is the Greek word that means common. It means fellowship. It was what we have in common, coin. The common coin of society, of civilization, is not merely the money itself, but also all the trappings of it. It's all wrapped up together. And then he's saying this coin is part of this world. Good, bad, ugly. And you made it off of the world. Therefore, it is not unlawful to pay it back to the world. It belongs to Caesar. Pay to Caesar what belongs to him. Because, and this is something that in Christianity is sometimes criticized, but it also that the authorities, it's where the idea of divine right of kings was derived from. The divine right of kings is not a biblical doctrine, but it is derived from the Bible. Just like the flat earth is not a biblical doctrine, but it's derived from, there's a lot of things that are derived from the Bible. You can derive a lot of things. The idea of eternal torment is derived from the Bible. The idea of annihilationism is derived from the Bible. Even universal reconciliation is also derived from the Bible. But that doesn't speak to the truth of any of those positions. It's just a question of we have to sort out the differences between these different doctrines, right? So, but the New Testament definitely does say that the earthly authorities are established by God, and on some level, they are owed a certain degree of respect and fear. They have power. They have the sword. They have authority, and their authority is not, though their power is worldly, their authority is somewhat divine, meaning because everything in the world is working according to God's plan. Even the injustices of the world are a part of God's plan. They are working all together for good for those who love God. Even though in the temporary, in the short term, it may seem bad. And so even the things of the government, it doesn't mean we should accept things that are wrong. We should try to change them. But we should also fear and respect that authority because it is of God. And not just assume we can just do whatever we want because God's on our side. That also represents God's side. That also represents God's will. And people say, well, then are all revolutions bad? Well, sometimes a revolution represents another rising of God's power to change things. A lot of times, the destiny of the world is not known to us till it happens. You know what I mean? Till it's done. And so there's no way to guarantee you're on the as they say, the right side of history. There's no such thing as the right side of history till the end comes out. And then the history is written, and then then they tell us which side was right. The good may prevail, but it may or not. But the destiny of the world is what it is. It's not a moral case like are the Romans just or the unjust? It's like, no, they are the ordained power. Therefore, they ought to be feared. And therefore, the taxes they collect are justified. Because you have a coin in your hand. And where'd you get it from? Oh, the Romans. So pay your if you're paying your taxes in Roman coins, then give to Caesar what is Caesar, and to God what is God's. Because he's asking your money. It's not a form of worship. You know what I mean? It's not voluntary. You know what I mean? It's a question of law, of authority. And Jesus says, no, they have that authority. And notice I said, you don't respect any man's persons. That was part of the thing. It's like, do you respect any authority at all? We know you don't respect authority, but that's not true. Christ does respect authority. And we'll have some more to say about that, because there's going to be a lot of stuff about authority coming up. So then we'll start with verse 27 tomorrow with the Sadducees. Thanks for joining me this day. Look forward to returning again and studying tomorrow.
For he looked for judgment, but behold oppression. For righteousness, but behold a cry. Woe unto them that join house to house, and lay field to field, till there be no place that they may be placed alone in the midst of the earth. In my ears, said the Lord of hosts, of a truth many houses shall be desolate.